and 7.9 yards per play in a much tougher division in the SEC West or conference in itself. But Alabama did have an easier non-conference schedule, so you can always say that. A big factor in this game is how tight I think it's going to be called by the officials. I can see this game being close if the whole pass interference thing comes into fruition a lot more, or I can see Alabama possibly blowing this team out. I think Saban is going to look to the Oklahoma Army game here. And I think he's going to play keep away. If Bama's up by double digits at half, I really see this game going under, and so I think that's my favorite play is the under 77. I didn't hit it yet because I was waiting for to go back to 80, but it's very stale at 77. I think that thing's going to climb, and I just see Nick Saban being smart here and just keeping the ball on the ground. Don't put so much pressure on your quarterbacks, Tua or Jalen Hurts, whoever you decide to use. Obviously, it's looking like Tua, but you can only see a Hurts sighting in this game, especially for a couple plays here. So now, but if it's close at the halftime, I'm betting the over in the second half. I'll tell you that. Let's say I come into the game over. Well, I will hedge right the hell out of that and bet over in the second half. If this game is close. So that's the way I want to treat this game. Nothing big, of course, but you do want to have some money on this big of a game just because it makes it fun, and that's what we do. Oh, last quick note about this game. It looks like Marquise Brown, star wide receiver from Oklahoma, is going to try and play this game. Now, he's not going to be 100%, obviously. He still could be very hobbled, so don't get too excited if you are an Oklahoma Sooners fan, or if you are on the Oklahoma Sooners side. All right, and now let's get into the college bowl games from New Year's Eve, December 31st. Remember to get your bowl plays in before you go partying. Here's another weird game. The Cincinnati versus Virginia Tech here, so different divisions. Virginia Tech was bad for a while. They started off good, then they were really bad, then they're good. Cincinnati had an easy schedule. They had a fantastic year, though. The Bearcats went 10-2. They deserve a good bowl game for doing that. Virginia Tech, very disappointing. You thought that Josh Jackson was going to be the man this year. He wasn't. They lost to teams like Old Dominion, Miami, Boston College. They haven't beaten any ranked teams at all. But they did. One thing they did was really good. They finished their season out beating Virginia and Marshall to continue their bowl streak of 26 consecutive appearances. They needed that Marshall game at the end that was postponed from the hurricane earlier in the year, and they were able to reschedule it and get up to 6 wins here. So this actually now in a row is the most, because Florida State didn't make a bowl game. 26 consecutive appearances is the most bowl consecutive appearances for Virginia Tech out of any other team, because Florida State is now out, which was at 36 years of consecutive bowl appearances. The Bearcats haven't really played, like I said, anybody with a pulse besides Temple and Central Florida, and they lost both those games, right? They beat UCLA, but we know how bad they were at the beginning of the year. I guess they barely beat Ohio, so I'm going to give them that. Ohio, really good MAC team, probably the best MAC team in my opinion. The Bearcats did everything on defense this year. They only allowed 4.6 yards per play, and they averaged 6.1 on offense. Most of the offense is due to their beast running back, Michael Warren. He is a beast. He had over 1,100 yards this year. He looked awesome. And it was mostly Virginia Tech's defense that failed them this year. They allowed 6.4 yards per play and 5.4 yards per run. Now, it didn't look like those last two games. They seemed to figured something out. Something clicked with this team, so I really don't want to take the favorite here. Something happened the last couple games. Virginia Tech stepped up. So I know that Cincinnati should be able to run all over the Hokies, laying that 5.5 points, but I think 5.5 is just a little bit too much for me, being that these divisions are different. So I guess if I'm going to lean anything, it's going to be Virginia Tech, and I lean the under 53.5. But I'm unfortunately not going to play this game. I do not have a play here. Let's move into the Redbox Bowl, Santa Clara, California. You have Michigan State versus Oregon. Oregon's laying 2.5 points. Over under is 48. Well, this certainly is more of a home game for Oregon, yet it's still about a 560-mile drive for fans from Eugene to Santa Clara, which is by San Francisco. What can we say about this Michigan State team here? Huge disappointment. They returned a ton of guys from a good year from the year before. Talk about wasting a great defense like Miami. Their offense was terrible, and they wasted a top 10 type defense. Their D averaged 2.6 yards against the run per run, which is top 2 in the nation. They allowed 18 points per game, which is top 14, and 4.6 yards per play, which is top 12. Their pathetic offense only averaged 4.7 yards per play. Shows you how awful they are. I mean, that's like bottom 100, like ranking around 120 in the nation. Part of this terrible play was being without running back LJ Scott for a few games. And they also lost Felton Davis for the season in October. But, those two guys weren't the only reason. That just added to it. Their star cornerback, Justin Lane, will be sitting out for this game for the NFL draft. Oregon, on the other hand, has also had high expectations with new coach Mario Cristobal. But that fizzled out when they first blew that game against Stanford, and then later losing to Arizona, which was unacceptable. Arizona, so bad. At least Oregon, with Justin Herbert at the helm, has an offense that can move the ball, averaging 6 yards per play. One thing I hate doing is betting against a seasoned coach like Michigan State's Mark D'Antonio in bowl games. He's 6-4 against the spread and knows how to stop teams dead in their tracks, including teams like Oregon. Power Ratings has this about a pick 'em, but if I had to choose a side here, I would probably lean Oregon a little bit with the points just because they can score at the end. Actually, it's more of a 2 points, not too bad. But I guess the only play for me would be under 48. I think Michigan State runs the ball all day and tries to control the time of possession and limit the amount of possessions Oregon can have. So I have a lean to the under 48, and it's small. Next, we have the Liberty Bowl in Memphis, Tennessee. Missouri versus Oklahoma State, getting 8 points. The Cowboys over-under is 74.5. Big total. Well, this total tells you a lot about the game. Oklahoma State saved my season win total under when they lost to TCU at the end of the season. So thank you for that, Oklahoma State. I got plus money on that. But more importantly, anybody that gives up 31 points to TCU should have to take a trip to the pit of misery. Missouri has been amazing since their Alabama game, winning 5 out of the last 6 games. Pretty big wins there, too, against Florida and Memphis, averaging 40 points per game during that stretch. Their only loss was Kentucky, and it was a 1-point loss. Oklahoma State, in my opinion, has had some big wins versus West Virginia and Texas, but they seem to catch teams at the right time this year. That's the opinion part. They seem to catch teams when they're kind of like in some weird second row game in a row, a few letdown spots. When they played anyone with a pulse of a defense, they lost to teams like Kansas State by 19, Texas Tech by 24, Iowa State at home by 6. If you plug their yards per play numbers, it does favor Oklahoma State, but you can't use that looking at these schedules. Missouri had to play Alabama, Georgia, Purdue, South Carolina, and Kentucky, while Oklahoma State had to play a typical Big 12 schedule, and Boise State, who gave up some special teams touchdowns to them early in the season. If you go by most power ratings, it has Missouri by 7 or 8 points. Hence the line moved down from 10 to 8. But I'm going with what Jeff Sagarin has from a recency perspective. I think it puts more weight, obviously, into how you finish the season when you look at the recency power rating. But I love it because this kind of explains how good Missouri was. If you look at those power ratings, it has Missouri winning this game by 18 points. Okay? 18 points. This Oklahoma State team, what can I say?
You are fake news.
What's real news is that their star running back, Justice Hill, is not playing this bowl game, while Drew Lock for Missouri is. The high total says everything to me. I'm taking Missouri minus 8, and I think it should be more of a 13 or 14 point spread. On to the Holiday Bowl. San Diego, California. Northwestern versus Utah. Utah's getting about 7 points. Over under is 46. Both coaches, Pat Fitzgerald and Kyle Whittingham for Utah, have fantastic bowl records. You know, even against the spread. Kyle's 8-3, and Pat Fitzgerald for Northwestern 6-4 since 2005. Here is another game of some very solid teams. The strange thing about Northwestern is that they played great in the Big Ten West and terrible in the non-conference, losing every non-conference game to, well, Notre Dame is understandable, but Akron and Duke, and all these games were at home, by the way, all of them. They gave up 0.8 yards per play more on defense than they do on offense. They have a 0.8 net yard discrepancy there. Kind of crazy that they're a bowl team. They only beat Rutgers by 3 and Illinois by 8. But this is also the team that beat Purdue. They beat Wisconsin. They beat Iowa and Nebraska. They almost beat Michigan and lost at the very end of this game by 3 points. So what the hell, Northwestern? Who are you? Lots of yin and yang there. It's like, what is going on? Utah, on the other hand, did very well and won the Pac-12 South. But at the end of the day, you got to look at their schedule. It was a mild Pac-12 schedule. They had non-conference games against Northern Illinois, BYU, and Weber State. Now, they did have to play Washington and Washington State, and did the best they can. But Utah's quarterback Tyler Huntley, he should finally be back for this game.